The night on Lunaris 9 was colder than usual. Winds howled across the frozen plains, shaking the walls of Elias Trent's small cabin. He had been living alone for 3 years, far away from the colony town, after the mining accident that took his wife. The stars above were sharp and silver, and the snow outside glowed faintly under their light. Elias was just finishing a mug of warm tea when he heard it, a knock on the door. It was soft at first, almost uncertain, but it came again, louder this time, and carried a sense of fear. Elias frowned. No one ever came out this far. The nearest settlement was 30 kilometers away, and storms had cut off travel for days. He grabbed his jacket, walked to the door, and opened it slightly. The wind pushed against him, cold and biting. Standing there was a tall alien woman with soft gray skin that shimmered faintly in the light from inside. Her eyes were wide and tired, and her voice trembled when she spoke. "Please, help us." Behind her were 2 small children, both wrapped in worn blankets. They looked exhausted, their tiny hands clutching the woman's coat. Elias could see fear in their eyes, and something else too. Hope. For a few seconds he didn't move. His mind tried to understand what he was seeing. Her species, the Lura'an, didn't usually come near human homes. Old tensions from the mining wars still lingered. But something in her voice, the quiet desperation, broke through all those thoughts. "Come in," he said finally, stepping aside. The woman gave a weak smile of relief and guided her children inside. The warmth from the heater made them flinch slightly, as if they hadn't felt it in days. Elias closed the door behind them and locked it. The storm outside roared louder, but inside only the sound of soft breathing and the crackle of the small electric stove filled the air. Elias found extra blankets and handed them over. "Sit near the heater," he said. The woman nodded gratefully. The children pressed close to her side, still shivering. After a few moments, she looked up. "Thank you, human. I am Lirana. My home was destroyed. Fire took everything." Her words came slowly, as if she was still learning his language. Elias poured her a cup of tea. "Drink this. It'll help." She took it carefully, her long fingers wrapping around the mug. "We walked for 2 days," she whispered. "No one would open their door. They said humans do not help our kind anymore." Elias felt a sharp pain in his chest. He remembered the old conflicts, the misunderstanding between species. He had lost friends during those years too. But seeing her there, tired and holding her children, all of that felt meaningless now. "You're safe here," he said quietly. "As long as you need." The children looked up at him. One of them, a little boy with silver hair and dark blue eyes, tilted his head curiously. "You are human?" he asked softly. Elias smiled. "Yes, I am." The boy blinked. "You don't look scary." That made Elias laugh, a sound that felt strange after so many silent nights. "I'll take that as a compliment." The girl, smaller and shy, hid behind her mother's arm but peeked out with wide eyes. Elias brought them food, simple soup and bread, and they ate quietly. Lirana kept glancing toward the door as if afraid someone might come to take them away. After the children finished eating, they fell asleep quickly on the rug near the heater. Lirana sat silently, her eyes heavy but alert. Elias fixed the generator's humming noise, and when he looked up again, she was watching him. "You live alone," she said softly. "I do," he replied. "Used to work in the mines. Lost my wife there." Lirana lowered her gaze. "I lost my mate too. The mines took him." For a moment, there was a heavy silence between them. 2 strangers from different worlds, both carrying the same kind of pain. Elias noticed her hands trembling slightly as she held the mug. He realized it wasn't only the cold, it was everything. The fear, the loss, the endless walking through the storm. He took another blanket and gently placed it around her shoulders. She looked surprised but didn't pull away. "You should rest," he said. "Tomorrow we'll see what can be done." Her eyes glistened faintly in the firelight. "Thank you, human. My people say humans forget kindness. They are wrong." Elias didn't answer. He just nodded and went to check the storm readings. The snow outside had thickened, turning into a blizzard. They wouldn't be going anywhere soon. He looked back at the 3 figures sleeping by the heater. The children were huddled together, their breathing slow and peaceful. Lirana leaned against the wall, her head tilted down, finally letting herself rest. Elias sat near the window, listening to the storm's cry. For the first time in years, his cabin didn't feel empty. He didn't understand why this alien widow had come to his door, or what fate had brought her there, but deep down he knew something had changed. There was a quiet warmth spreading through his small home, A warmth stronger than the heater's glow. A warmth that came from life returning to a place that had forgotten it. As the night went on, Elias watched the snow swirl outside and handed him a small cup of warm milk. Here, drink this. Careful, it's hot. The boy nodded politely and drank, the warmth making his cheeks glow faintly. Soon Lirana woke too. Her silver-gray hair had fallen loose and her skin caught the light like frost on metal. She looked around the cabin for a moment as if unsure where she was, then remembered and relaxed. "Good morning, human," she said gently. "Your home is kind," Elias shrugged. "Just a cabin. Nothing fancy." He noticed she spoke a little better today, her words smoother. She must have studied the human tongue before. He placed food in front of her and her children. "Eat all you can. We're snowed in for now. I'll check the comm link later, maybe the signal's back." They ate quietly for a while. The younger child, the little girl, smiled shyly as she chewed. Elias found himself watching them, feeling something stir inside him, a forgotten sense of belonging. After breakfast, Elias pulled on his jacket and opened the door to check the generator outside. The wind hit him like ice. Snow had piled high against the doorframe, almost blocking the entrance. He pushed through and cleared the vents, his breath turning to mist. Behind him, he heard a faint sound. When he turned, he saw Lirana standing there, wrapped in his spare coat. "You shouldn't be out here," he said, brushing snow from his sleeves. "I wanted to help," she replied. "Your heater keeps us alive." "I will not let it fail," Elias smiled faintly. "You've got spirit, I'll give you that." They worked side by side in silence for a while, clearing snow from the intake vents. Her hands moved fast, used to hard work. Elias realized she must have helped her late husband in the mines once. When they finished, she looked at him, her breath visible in the cold air. "My people never thought humans could care. You prove different." He looked away for a moment, embarrassed. "I'm just doing what anyone should do." "Not anyone," she said quietly. When they went back inside, the children were laughing. They had found an old music box Elias had repaired long ago. Its tiny melody filled the cabin. Lirana knelt beside them, smiling for the first time since she had arrived. The simple sound of that laugh made Elias pause. It had been years since laughter filled this place. Later, Lirana helped clean the small living space. She worked carefully, moving as if afraid to touch too much. Elias tried to tell her to rest, but she insisted. "Working keeps me strong," she said. "And I owe you comfort." Elias fixed a broken shelf while she swept the floor. The children followed him everywhere, asking questions about human things. Why he wore gloves, why his eyes were brown instead of bright. Their curiosity was innocent and endless. Elias answered each question patiently. By the end of the day, it felt like the small cabin was alive again. When evening came, the storm outside grew worse. The wind screamed around the walls and snow hammered the windows. Elias checked the power readings and frowned. "The lines are unstable. If the generator cuts, we'll lose heat." Lirana looked up, concern flashing across her face. "Can it be fixed?" "Maybe. I'll try to stabilize it." He worked through the night while she watched silently. Once, when the lights flickered, she placed her hand on his shoulder. "You are brave, human." He shook his head. "Just stubborn." When the power finally steadied, he sat back, exhausted. Lirana poured him tea from the pot he had set aside. The warmth in the cup felt like sunlight after a long winter. She handed it to him carefully. "My mate used to fix things too," she said quietly. "When the mines were safe, he would come home and play with our children." Then one day there was a cave-in. The company left his body under the rock. They said it was not worth the cost to dig him out. Elias stared into his tea. He knew that pain. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "No one deserves that." Her eyes glistened faintly, but she smiled through it. "You lost someone too," he nodded. "My wife. The same mines." They sat in silence after that. The children were asleep again, huddled close under their blankets. Outside, the snow had begun to ease and stars faintly shone through the clouds. Lirana looked at him for a long moment. "Maybe our worlds are not so different," she said. Elias met her gaze. "Maybe not." A quiet calm settled over the cabin. The wind slowed. The heater hummed softly. Elias leaned back in his chair and let his eyes close. For the first time in years, he didn't feel the weight of loneliness pressing down on him. The alien mother had brought something unexpected. Peace. Lirana looked at him as he drifted to sleep. She whispered a word in her own language. a soft phrase that meant safe home. Then she turned off the lamp and sat near her children, watching the gentle rise and fall of their breathing. The human had opened his door to strangers, but in that moment he had opened something far greater, his heart. The days slowly passed, and the storm outside began to calm. The snow no longer screamed against the windows, and a pale sunlight touched the frozen plains beyond the cabin. Elias had fixed the power lines and repaired the comm unit, but no signals were coming through yet. They were still cut off from the rest of the colony. Even so, the small cabin didn't feel lonely anymore. It felt alive, filled with quiet voices, soft laughter, and the scent of warm food. Liranna helped in every way she could. She cooked simple meals using his supplies carefully. Her way of cooking was different. She added strange herbs from her own pack, and the food came out with a gentle, earthy smell that filled the room. Elias pretended not to notice when she accidentally burned the bread or used too much salt. The children giggled each time she made a mistake, and she would smile shyly at Elias, embarrassed. "Human food is hard," she said one evening, her cheeks faintly glowing in the heater light. Elias laughed softly. "It takes time. You're doing fine." Her children were starting to relax too. Tari, the older boy, followed Elias everywhere, asking endless questions about human machines. The younger one, Nim, spent her time drawing little pictures on scraps of paper with a broken stylus. Sometimes she drew her mother, sometimes the cabin, and once, she drew all of them together, Elias, Liranna, and the children standing under a big sun. Elias didn't say anything when he saw it, but he kept that drawing carefully under his toolbox. One night, when the children were asleep, Liranna sat by the heater, quietly mending Elias's torn jacket. Her fingers moved fast, careful and graceful. Elias was checking the oxygen filters when she spoke. "You live with silence, human." "Too much silence." He glanced up. "Guess I got used to it." She looked at him for a long moment. "My people say silence can eat the heart. When my mate died, I tried to live with it too. But it followed me even in dreams." Elias nodded slowly. "I know that feeling." Liranna lowered her eyes. "You gave warmth to strangers. My children are safe because of you. But you," she hesitated, "you are still cold inside." Elias didn't answer. He just looked at the fire. She placed the finished jacket beside him and stood up. "I owe you more than food and thanks," she said softly. "I can offer you comfort, human. You saved my family. Let me give you warmth in return." Her voice trembled, not from fear but from something deeper, a mix of hope and sorrow. Elias froze. He understood what she meant, but he also saw the pain in her eyes, the grief she still carried. He shook his head gently. "You don't owe me anything, Liranna. I helped because it was right, not because I wanted payment." She frowned slightly, not in anger but confusion. Among my kind, when someone saves a life, they become part of the family. It is our way. "I understand," he said quietly, "but humans, we see family as something that grows, not something we earn in a single night." For a few seconds she stood silently, the firelight reflecting in her eyes. Then she gave a faint smile, though it was sad. "You are strange, human. Strong heart but full of walls." "Maybe," Elias admitted, "but walls can fall. Just takes time." Liranna nodded slowly and stepped back, wrapping her shawl around her shoulders. "Then I will wait." He didn't know what to say. She sat down again, folding her hands in her lap, and for a while the only sound was the crackle of the heater. Outside, the wind was softer now, carrying faint howls from the icy plains. Inside, the cabin was quiet, warm, and heavy with unspoken thoughts. Elias looked toward the children, sleeping peacefully near the corner, and felt a strange ache in his chest. He wasn't sure if it was loneliness or something new, something fragile that was beginning to grow. Later that night, he couldn't sleep. He stepped outside for air, watching the frozen landscape under the pale light of 2 moons. The snow glittered like dusted glass, and for the first time in a long while, he thought the world looked beautiful. Behind him, the door opened softly. Liranna stepped out, her breath visible in the cold. "You should rest," she said quietly. "Couldn't sleep," he replied. She came to stand beside him. "Humans dream too much when they carry pain." Elias chuckled softly. "You sound like someone who's been through the same." She nodded. "Every night for 2 years." Her eyes turned upward to the stars. "My mate is among them now, I think, watching." Elias followed her gaze. "Maybe he's proud. You kept your children safe." You came all this way. She turned to him slowly. And you, alone in this cold world, still opened your door to us. My mate would have called that an act of light. He didn't know how to respond to that. Her words were simple, but they carried a weight he couldn't describe. They stood together in silence, watching the twin moons drift across the sky. When they went back inside, Lirana stopped near the heater. Elias, she said softly, I will not offer again. But know this, if you ever wish for warmth, my home, my heart, and my children will be yours too. Elias looked at her, his eyes full of quiet gratitude. You've already given me more than you know, he said. She nodded once, then turned toward her sleeping children. Elias sat down near the heater and watched the fire flicker lower and lower until only faint orange light remained. Something inside him felt lighter. He didn't accept her offer, but somehow her words healed a part of him that had been broken for years. Out there, her face grew tense. Are they soldiers? Maybe scavengers, Elias replied. They move around old sites looking for parts to sell. Some don't care who they hurt. He powered up the cabin's small defense scanner. The old screen flickered, showing 3 heat signatures moving toward the property line. Lirana stepped closer, her hand clutching the edge of the table. They'll come here, she whispered. They always come where smoke rises. Elias looked at the heater vent that was sending steam into the cold air. He cursed under his breath. They probably saw it, he thought quickly. The cabin had no real weapons, just tools and 2 mining drones he'd reprogrammed for repair work. He turned to her. Take the children into the back room. Don't come out unless I call. Lirana hesitated. You'll face them alone? I'll handle it, Elias said. His voice was calm, but inside he felt the familiar edge of fear. He had faced danger before, but this time it wasn't only his life that mattered. Minutes later, the sound of footsteps came through the snow, heavy, crunching, getting closer. Elias stood at the door, his hand near the control for the drones. When the knock came, it was rough and impatient. Open up, a voice shouted. We saw your heat signature. You've got power, share it or we'll take it. Elias opened the door halfway. 3 figures stood there, wrapped in ragged coats and breathing masks. Their eyes looked sharp, hungry. You're trespassing, Elias said quietly. This is private property. Private property? One of them laughed. Out here? Don't joke, old man. You've got food, heat, maybe fuel. We want to share. Elias didn't move. There's nothing for you here. Turn around before the next storm hits. The man at the front took a step closer, snow crunching under his boots. You think you can scare us? We're not leaving without something. Elias pressed the button on his wristband. Behind him, the 2 mining drones activated with a deep hum, their lights flickering red. They floated forward, sharp tools glinting in the light. The scavengers froze. Elias's voice stayed low but firm. These drones cut through rock and steel. Don't make them prove what they can do. The men stepped back slightly, eyes darting between each other. You wouldn't use those on us, one of them said, trying to sound brave. Try me, Elias said simply. For a moment, no one moved. The cold wind hissed through the silence. Then one of the scavengers muttered a curse and pulled his partner's arm. Forget it. Not worth it. They turned and trudged back into the snow, disappearing toward the ridge. Elias waited until the last shadow vanished before powering the drones down. His hands were shaking slightly. He hadn't fought anyone, but the tension had drained him completely. When he turned, Lirana was standing in the doorway, her children clutching her arms. Her eyes were wide with fear and relief. You faced them without fear, she whispered. He gave a tired smile. I was terrified. I just didn't show it. She stepped forward, her voice trembling. They could have killed you. Maybe, he said quietly. But I couldn't let them near you or the kids. Her eyes filled with tears. She looked at him as if seeing him differently for the first time. You would protect children not of your blood, she said softly. You are not like other humans. Elias shook his head. Maybe that's what being human means, helping when you can. That night they sat together near the heater. The children were finally asleep again, safe and unaware of the danger that had passed. Lirana looked at Elias in silence for a long time. The light from the heater made her silver skin glow faintly, soft and warm. You risked your life for us, she said quietly. You didn't have to. He looked at her, tired but calm. I've lost enough people in my life. I wasn't going to lose anyone else if I could stop it. Her hand moved slightly as if she wanted to touch his but hesitated. "In my world," she whispered, "those who protect are called heart keepers. They are the ones who keep the light alive in others." Elias smiled faintly. "I'm no hero, Lirana. Just a man trying to do the right thing." She leaned back slowly, watching him. Then maybe that is what a hero truly is. Outside, the snow had stopped falling. The night sky was full of stars, clear and endless. Inside, the cabin glowed softly, not just from the heater but from something unseen. For the first time, Lirana's fear began to fade. She no longer saw Elias as a stranger. She saw him as something else, a bridge between two worlds. A man whose quiet courage spoke louder than any words. When the last light faded and the cabin grew still, Elias looked at the sleeping children and whispered to himself, "As long as they're safe, that's enough?" "Maybe," Elias replied. "I'll send a signal. If the relay tower is still working, someone will pick it up." He repaired the comm unit carefully, adjusting the broken wires until the screen flickered back to life. A weak connection appeared. He sent a message to the nearest human outpost and waited. For hours, nothing came back. Then finally, a small green light blinked. "Signal received." "They got it," Elias said with relief. "A rescue team might come within a day." Lirana froze for a moment. Her hands trembled slightly as she set down a cup. "That means my people will come too. They will ask questions. They'll want to know you're safe," Elias said. She looked down. "They don't trust humans. If they find out I stayed in a human's home, they might take my children away." Elias stared at her, surprised. "They would do that." She nodded. "They still blame your kind for the mining wars. They say humans bring sorrow." He said nothing for a long time. Then he sighed. "You can tell them whatever you need. I'll back you up." Her eyes softened. "You would lie for me?" "Not lie," he said gently. "Just protect what matters." The rest of the day passed in uneasy quiet. Lirana tried to keep busy, cleaning and packing their few things, but her eyes often went to the children. They were playing with Elias's old drone, pretending it was a flying pet. She smiled faintly, but worry never left her face. That evening, the sound of an engine echoed faintly across the snow. Elias looked out the window and saw the lights of a transport ship landing on the ridge. "They're here," he said softly. Lirana gathered her children close and stood near the door. When the knock came, it was polite but firm. Elias opened it slowly. 3 figures stood outside, 2 human officers and 1 Lurahan soldier, tall and silent, his armor glinting under the pale sky. The Lurahan stepped forward first. His voice was cold. "We received a signal about survivors." "Identify yourself," Elias nodded. "Elias Trent, human engineer." These 3 were caught in the storm. I offered them shelter. The soldier's eyes shifted toward Lirana. "Lirana of the Eastern Valley. We thought you dead." She bowed her head slightly. "We survived because of him," she said softly. The soldier's gaze turned hard. "You stayed with a human? With your children?" "They would have frozen without me," Elias said firmly. "I did what anyone would." The Lurahan soldier frowned. "Not everyone would. Especially not your kind." Elias didn't argue. He stood tall and calm. "Believe what you want, but they're alive because of me." The soldier turned away, speaking into his communicator. The human officer beside him smiled faintly. "You did good work, Trent. We'll report your actions to the council." When the soldiers finished checking the area, they prepared to escort Lirana and her children back to the colony. Lirana stood silently, her hand gripping her daughter's shoulder. Elias noticed her hesitation. "You'll be safe now," he said quietly. "That's what matters." She looked at him with wet eyes. "And you?" "You will be alone again." He smiled gently. "I've been alone before." "I'll manage," but Lirana didn't move. The soldier called to her impatiently, but she didn't answer. She stepped closer to Elias. "You think I came here by chance," she whispered. "But maybe the storm brought me to the only person who still believes in kindness." He shook his head slightly. "You don't owe me anything." She smiled sadly. "You still don't understand. My children see you as their father now. They call you keeper of warmth in our tongue. You are already part of our family." Elias's throat tightened. Before he could reply, the little boy ran forward and hugged his leg. "Don't let us go, Papa," he said softly. The soldier frowned at the word Papa. Lirana looked up, her expression steady now. I will stay, she said. What? The soldier asked sharply. You belong with your people. My people forgot mercy, she replied calmly. This human remembered it. My children will learn both ways, their kind and his. The human officer stepped forward slowly. There's no law against it, he said. If she wishes to remain here, she can. The Luran soldier looked angry, but he couldn't argue. Very well, he said finally. You've chosen your path. He turned away and signaled the shuttle to leave. As the ship lifted off, snow swirled around them again. Lirana's children cheered as the wind rushed by. Elias stood silently, trying to understand what had just happened. Lirana turned to him and smiled gently. You said humans see family as something that grows, she said softly. I think ours has grown already. He looked at her, then at the two children clinging to her hands. Are you sure about this? She nodded. You gave us shelter. Now let us give you home. Elias couldn't speak. The words caught in his throat. He simply nodded and opened the cabin door for them. The warmth from inside spilled out into the cold, and the three of them stepped in together. As the door closed behind them, the snow outside began to fall again. Soft, silent, peaceful. Inside, the sound of laughter returned, and for the first time in years, Elias knew the meaning of belonging. He looked around his once empty cabin and whispered to himself, Guess I'm not alone anymore. Days turned into weeks, and the snow around the cabin began to melt under the weak sunlight of Lunaris 9. The long storm had passed, leaving behind a quiet world of soft blue skies and bright frozen rivers. Elias found himself waking each morning to the sound of laughter, something his home hadn't known for years. The children, Tari and Nim, ran across the yard, chasing a drone that Elias had turned into a playful toy. Their voices carried across the cold air like music. Inside the cabin, Lirana was making breakfast. She had learned to use the human stove, though she still preferred her own cooking style. She had found a way to mix Elias's supplies with wild plants that grew under the ice layers nearby. The meals she made always had a strange but pleasant taste, half alien, half human. Elias pretended to grumble about the flavor, but secretly he enjoyed every bite. That morning, he stepped inside with a bundle of tools from the shed. We'll need to rebuild the water line, he said. The ice broke the pipes again. Lirana nodded. I can help, she said, drying her hands. The children will stay inside. They listen better now. Elias smiled faintly. They listen to you. Not sure they listen to me. They do, she said softly. They follow your every word. Outside, they worked side by side, melting sections of frozen pipe with heat rods and replacing the cracked joints. Elias noticed how Lirana no longer hesitated to move near him. The first days had been filled with distance and silence, but now she laughed easily and spoke with calm confidence. The cold didn't seem as sharp when she was near. As they worked, Elias said, When spring comes, we could plant a few crops near the ridge. The soil there still has life. Planting, she repeated, smiling. I've never done that. My world was mostly stone and caves. Then we'll learn together, Elias said. Later that afternoon, they took the children to the open fields. The sun was low and the air glowed pale gold. The children built little snow towers while Lirana hummed a song from her world. Elias listened quietly. It wasn't like human music, it was soft, almost like wind passing through glass. What's that song? He asked. It's called Light Returns, she said. We sing it after long storms. It means the heart survived another night. He looked at her thoughtfully. That's a good song for this place, she smiled. It's a good song for you, human. As the days went on, life became simple but full. Elias taught the children to repair small machines, and Lirana taught them to read both her language and his. They mixed their worlds like colors blending on a canvas. In the evenings, they sat by the heater sharing stories. Elias spoke of Earth, of green fields and oceans they had never seen. Lirana told tales of her people, who once lived under crystal caves where the light danced like living fire. One evening, as the sky turned silver outside, Elias found himself watching Lirana as she braided Neem's hair. The warmth of the lamp touched her face, and for a moment she looked almost human. Gentle, calm, and full of quiet strength. He realized then how much she had become part of his life. She wasn't just a guest anymore. She was home. Lirana looked up and caught his gaze. What are you thinking, Elias? He smiled faintly. That this place feels different now. Better. She tilted her head. You mean warmer? Yes, he said softly. Much warmer. She smiled at that, her eyes glimmering. Then maybe you are finally learning the meaning of my people's word for family. We call it Selah, which means the place where souls rest together. Elias nodded slowly. I think I understand. A few days later, a small shuttle arrived from the colony. It brought supplies and news from other settlers. The pilot, a human woman named Marin, looked surprised when she saw Lirana and her children playing outside the cabin. Didn't think I'd see a Luran family living with one of ours, she said with a smile. You've made history, Trent. Elias just shrugged. Wasn't planning on it, Marin laughed. Too late. People at the colony are talking. They say you brought peace to a family that had none. When she left, Lirana asked him what the pilot had said. Elias only smiled. She said we're doing something right. That night, as the stars came out, Lirana stepped outside and stood beside Elias. Your people and mine may never fully trust each other, she said. But here in this small home they already do. Elias looked at her, then at the two small children peeking out the window, their faces full of joy. Maybe that's how peace starts, he said. Not with speeches or flags, just with people learning to care again. Lirana nodded slowly. Yes. Caring is the first light after darkness. She turned to him then, her eyes glowing softly in the night air. Elias, you have given us more than safety. You gave us a life again. He looked down, his voice quiet. You gave me one too. She stepped closer, close enough that he could feel the faint warmth of her breath. Among my kind, she whispered, when hearts survive the storm together, they belong to the same fire. Elias didn't know what to say, but he didn't need to. They stood there side by side, watching the twin moons rise above the snow. The light touched the cabin windows where two small faces smiled at them. For the first time in years, Elias felt whole. The silence that once filled his world had been replaced by laughter, music, and gentle voices. The cold land of Lunaris 9 had not changed, but he had. And as the night deepened, Elias realized that the universe didn't always bring war between species. Sometimes it brought something far greater, a chance for two worlds to learn love in the quiet, warmth of a single home. Years passed quietly on Lunaris 9, the small cabin that once stood alone in the frozen plains had changed. It was no longer just Elias's shelter. It had become a home filled with laughter, light, and new life. The snow around it had melted into green patches, where small crops grew under the weak sun. A windmill turned slowly in the wind, powering the home that two worlds had built together. Elias stood outside one morning, watching the fields. The air was still cold, but gentle warmth touched his face. Behind him, he could hear Lirana's voice calling the children to breakfast. Tari and Nim had grown taller now. They ran out of the door, chasing each other, their mixed features shining. Lura-on eyes with human smiles. They were proof that two kinds of people could live as one family. Don't run too far, Lirana said, stepping out onto the porch. Her silver hair caught the light, and her soft gray skin seemed to glow under the sun. Elias turned toward her with a small smile. They've got your energy, he said, wiping his hands on his work gloves. She smiled back. And your stubbornness, he chuckled. I'll take that as a compliment. They shared a quiet moment, standing side by side, watching the children. Life had not been easy after the rescue ship left. Some settlers still whispered about the human who took in an alien widow. Others called it strange, even wrong. But Elias never cared what they said. Every day when he saw Lirana and the children smiling, he knew he had made the right choice. After breakfast, Elias walked to the ridge to check the new power lines. He had built them with help from a few settlers who respected him. The colony was expanding now, and people often came to ask for his advice. Some even brought Lura-on workers with them. Slowly, the two races had started to speak, to trade, and to work together. What had begun as a simple act of kindness had started a small wave of peace across the planet. When Elias returned home that evening, he found Lirana singing softly while cooking. The children were sitting near the heater, studying a lesson on the holo tablet. Tari looked up when Elias entered. Papa, the teacher says humans once fought each other for land, he said curiously. Why? Elias sighed and sat beside him. Because sometimes people forget what matters most. They think power is more important than kindness. Nim looked up. Will humans and Lura-ons fight again someday? Lirana turned, her voice calm. Not if you remember your father's heart, little one. He showed us another way. Elias smiled gently, though her words made him feel both proud and humble. If people keep caring for each other like we do here, then maybe they won't fight again. That night, after the children were asleep, Lirana sat beside Elias near the small fire. The light danced softly across the walls, showing the simple life they had built. "You've changed much," she said quietly. He smiled. "So have you." She looked at him thoughtfully. "When I first came to your door, I was lost and afraid. You didn't just save us, you saved something inside me. You reminded me that hope can survive even in the cold." Elias looked into the fire. "Maybe you did the same for me. Before you came, this place was just walls and silence. Now it's home." Lirana reached out and placed her hand over his. "Do you know what my people would call you now?" She asked softly. "What's that?" He said. "A heartkeeper. The one who guards warmth not with weapons but with kindness." Elias smiled at the word. "I think I like that." They sat together in silence for a while. Outside, the stars shone bright over the plains. The moons hung low, painting the snow with soft silver light. Lirana rested her head lightly against his shoulder. "The stars look kinder now," she whispered. "Maybe they are," he replied. "Or maybe it's just us." Weeks later, a group of settlers arrived at their cabin. Among them was a young reporter who had heard about the house that united two worlds. She wanted to tell their story for the colony's records. Elias wasn't sure about it at first, but Lirana encouraged him. "People should know what kindness can build," she said. So the reporter sat with them, asking questions while recording everything. When she asked Elias what made him open his door that night long ago, he thought for a long moment before answering. "Because she knocked," he said simply. "And no one should be left outside in the storm." When the story spread across the colony, something unexpected happened. More humans and Luraans began to work together. Families visited from distant towns just to see the place where it all began. Children played together under the alien sky, their laughter echoing through the plains. One evening, as Elias sat on the porch watching the sunset, he saw a small group of settlers planting crops nearby, humans and Luraans side by side. Lirana joined him, standing quietly for a moment. "Look," she said softly, "your kindness became a seed. Now it grows everywhere." Elias nodded. "Maybe humanity's gift was never strength or power," he said. "Maybe it was the courage to care." Lirana smiled. "And that is why the stars will always remember your kind." He looked at her, his eyes warm. "Not just mine," he said gently. "Ours." As night fell, their children ran out to join them. The air shimmered with the glow of the moons, and the sound of laughter filled the valley. The once lonely cabin stood as a bright sign of peace, humans and aliens living as family. Elias wrapped his arm around Lirana as they watched their children play. "You know," he said with a soft smile, "if anyone had told me years ago that my home would become a place for two worlds, I wouldn't have believed them." Lirana rested her head against him. "Sometimes the universe hides its gifts inside storms," she whispered. Elias looked at the sky, the stars reflecting in his eyes. "Then I'm glad I opened the door." And there, under the quiet light of two moons, the man who once lived alone and the alien widow who had knocked on his door watched their children laugh among the stars. Proof that love, not war, was humanity's greatest strength.